Coming at you with another video from the Handy Life. Today is a really exciting day. We get to work on a project that I've wanted to work on ever since we moved into the house, and that is a vegetable garden. I'm going to put a garden in the back corner of the house, back corner of the backyard. I got all the supplies for the job. I have started the work, so let me show you what we got. Okay guys, here's our setup. We've got a bed that I'm going to put in right here, a bed that I'm going to put in right here. We're kind of in the back corner of the backyard, so this is just the layout that worked well here. Also, you'll notice in my backyard, I've got a couple of boxes, one for electrical, one for the cable company, Comcast. So I'm working around that just in case these guys ever have to get at these boxes. There's not going to be anything in the way. They'll easily be able to access them. I don't want to have to rip apart my garden just because these guys need to do something, just because Comcast needs to come in and mess with their box. So I'm still leaving access. So basically what you're going to see, what you have is two beds. There'll be a gate here coming in, a walkway here. On either side you'll have our beds. Back here we'll have different herbs and things. And in the main beds, I'm going to build up with wood, using some wood that I have, the retaining walls. You'll notice here that I've already bordered it out with concrete, and that's one of the first things that I did with the longevity aspect in mind and the beauty. It's not going to make it look bad, but the longevity of it. I don't want the wood that I'm going to use for this job to be sitting right at grade, because it doesn't matter if it's cedar, doesn't matter if it's treated, it's going to rot over time if it's at grade. So I'm keeping it up off of the ground so that it's going to mostly be dry. I have some other measures I'm going to use as well. But this was a big one for me. It took a couple of days for me to form all this up and pour it. I poured this one first. I still have the form on the one I poured second. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about that next. If you've never used concrete before, don't fear. It's not hard at all to work with. Anybody can do this, honestly. And it's cheap as well. I think this entire area that I've bordered out in this concrete, I think it was about 19 bags of concrete, and about $3.40 a bag. You're looking at, I don't know, 70 bucks, 75 bucks. So not a whole lot. So practice with concrete. It's extremely versatile. You can use it with a lot of things. In this case, I should mention that I also put rebar in the concrete. So I have a 3/8 rebar running through all of the concrete in case I have cracks. That'll keep the concrete together. So let's talk about the form. So you can see most areas, I supported the form using just the soil that was already here. I just pushed it up against here so it wouldn't really come out, the form wouldn't bulge out on me with the pressure coming from the concrete once I put it in the form. To get this consistent spacing, I put spacer blocks in the form itself, and I left them in, and I just poured the concrete over top. So you'll see, if I take some of these away, you might be able to see a couple of blocks in here. It's just some wooden blocks. Those formed the spacers to make sure I had consistent width of my borders throughout. Let's take away some of this. You see some spots I put stakes, like right here. It just depended on what I felt like. So let's take off some of these stakes, and I'll show you what I used for the form material. It's this product. It's called melamine. It's a particle board with a vinyl covering on both sides. You don't have to use this. I just had some scraps in my garage, so I cut it down into 4-inch strips, and I made my border like that. And I find that it's a very nice material to use because you end up with a really smooth, sidewall to all your concrete when you use that. You can see I have a step change here in the concrete height. I did that by putting in this little dam, and I made it up to this height only. So below here is a consistent run of concrete that runs below that. And that is because I wanted it to be high enough to retain the crushed granite that I'm going to put in here as a walkway later on in the design. You'll also see right here, I put a little indentation in the concrete. The way that I did that was just to pour the concrete and then come back with a foam that I had. It's actually an insulation. We get HelloFresh delivered at the house. Awesome service, by the way. You might want to look into it. But sometimes they send the boxes with the food enclosed in a foam insulation. So I just save that and I use it when I need it. Sometimes it comes in handy. You can see one of the blocks is right here. So I pour the concrete and then I push this foam into it. But then later, the nice thing is I can come back and very easily remove this foam block like this, and I've got a nice little indentation in my concrete. Now, why am I putting that indentation in my concrete? Well, I'm going to have the wood, the retaining walls that I'm going to have, they are going to have posts that go down to this into this concrete, and this little slot in the concrete is going to help anchor the post down laterally so the whole thing can't move. And I'm going to have this all over on the side, so it's not going to be able to move. Basically, the posts are going to extend a little bit below the bottom level of the retaining slats that go horizontally, and that's going to allow it to just sit in this little concavity here and stay in place. This is our wood for the job. This is cedar, and this came in the form of these giant beams. Now these are the small beams that I have left over. This was all these little slats. I ripped these down from a 24-foot long 4x12. Of course, they don't sell they don't sell this at Home Depot usually, but somebody ordered it off the Pro Desk. They brought it back. It was in the store and I was just looking at it. I inquired about it, and sure enough, they were looking aggressively to sell it, so they gave it to me at a really good price. Now you can buy cedar at Home Depot or at any of these big box stores. So you may not get it in these big timbers like I have it here, but you can get it nonetheless if you want to use cedar for your job. It is a lot more expensive than pine. In my case, I had this big 4x12, and it's a true 4. It's not 3.5. True 4. So I had to buy a bigger saw. All right, I finished up cutting the wood last night. You can see pretty much everything in its proper place right now. It's all rough cut right now. I need to take it to the garage and plane all this down. But you can see a little bit about the design. These posts here are 40 inches tall. The wall is the actual retaining wall for the soil is gonna come up to about here, and then above that this area will be chicken wire to keep rabbits and squirrels from getting to the vegetables that we'll have in here. Then you'll have a gate right here walking in the middle. And this will be a little bit deeper bed. I've got 4 pieces of lumber that I'm gonna stack on their ends to make the walls up, whereas everything else has 3. I just don't have enough lumber to do 4 everywhere, and I don't want to buy any more lumber. So I'm gonna make this one the deep bed, and then back here we'll have a compost bin and some potted stuff, herbs and things like that. We got all of our boards in the driveway. I've marked them all with where they go, numbered them out. So this is number 9, and that corresponds to a location in the bed. I've got a planer here, a DeWalt planer. My game plan is to plane the one side that's definitely going to be visible. That could be the outside of a bed, or that could be that back wall where the compost bin and things like that are going to go. And then I'm going to actually see if I can biscuit the individual boards of lumber together so that they don't move independently, so that they move as one wall. Because I don't want individual boards bulging out or something like that to happen. So I'm going to try and biscuit them all together. That's the game plan. Okay, I'm trimming the post a little bit. I put a chamfer on all the corners, and I'm putting this little point on the top. I'll show you how I'm doing that. I've got a trim router over here. This is my setup. To kind of clamp the post in place, I've got these 2 boards on either side, and then I've got these little slats fixed to the bench that I'm working with. So now it can't move very much, and it's very easy for me to pass the router down the corners to trim them up. And then I bring it over here, and I've got my miter saw here angled at 30 degrees. And I've got a board here, and I've glued it to the deck of the miter saw, and that's my stop. So I'm going to put the board up against the stop, and make the cuts. And I'll show you real quick with a video of how that's gonna go. All right, guys, I'm assembling this thing now. I'll walk you through some steps of how I'm doing it, make a couple of videos of this. As you can see, I'm using pocket holes, 3 of them in each side. And I've got my post and everything lined up. I'm attaching one at a time and moving on. There is a little bit of a slope in my concrete, so I'm having to work with that. And you probably can't see it on the video, but there's definitely a down slope going this way in this little section. And that's resulting in this. So instead of cutting that board straight up and down, cutting it you know, at a 90, I'm actually going to cut it at an angle and use this what do you call this? I don't even remember what you call this. A scribe tool, I'm gonna scribe this board with this, basically. I'm gonna basically make mark the gap, or open it to where the gap matches the actual initial gap, and then I'll trace down the entire board and cut this at an angle to match this angle. Because if I don't, then this side, on this side, is going to be sticking up in the air whenever I attach it all. Obviously, I don't want that. So that's what I'll show you for now, and then we'll go over into the garage and you'll see how I'm prepping all these boards and getting them ready to go and attaching them together. All right, we're going to start with marking the post. This post is going to be sitting at a corner. There'll be a wall coming into it here and another one here. Easy way to mark it that I've been doing is just have this 3/4 inch piece of plywood up next to it. And this is where the board is going to land on this plywood. So that's one wall coming into that side and another wall coming into this side. Boom. So that's an easy way for me to mark it and know where it's going. I'm also putting it 1 1/8 up from the bottom. Those little divots in my concrete, the depth is 1.25 inches. So that means 1 1/8 inches. It'll be about 1/8 of an inch up off the bottom, which is okay. I don't need it sitting right on the concrete. It can be up just a hair. All right, so these are all, this post is fully marked and ready to go. Let's move over here. This is my retaining wall. I need to make one final cut here. Like I just showed you, I scribed this this angle here by just tracing the side of the post with the scribe tool, and I'm going to match that angle. Okay, in the same way that I cut the post using this little setup, I'm going to clamp this in place, and we are going to chamfer the top edge on both sides. Get rid of this sharp edge up here. Go ahead and attach this. And this is just allowing me to do all this work by myself with no extra hands available to hold this board. And the fact that I don't have a router table. Okay, now that we're all covered in sawdust, let's go ahead and put some pocket holes in here. You can see how gnarly some of my cuts were initially. That's when I first started. I'm using that circular saw to cut these big boards, these big beams. So, okay, the way I'm doing the pocket holes, when you have a big board like this, that's not easy to put into one of the jig arrangements. One of the setups with pocket holes where you actually have a base. This is a lot easier to do, is use this smaller little setup. I'm measuring 1.5 inches away from the side. And this is where the jig will be placed. You'll see what I mean in just a second. So this makes it way easier. It's my little guide. Now I'm gonna line it up with the mark I just made. And all you do is clamp it down, come back, oh, that ain't gonna work. Come back and drill your hole. Like that. So I'm putting one pocket hole in each board, and I'm gonna do this with both sides of the board, then we're gonna go in the backyard and attach it all. So it's coming together. I'm kind of trying to be pretty precise with this particular area because this is where I'm going to have my gate. So I would like these two posts to be absolutely vertical or as close to it as possible, because that's going to mean my spacing between the two posts is pretty consistent from top to bottom. That's going to make my gate construction a lot easier than if it's variable throughout. So on this side, on this piece, I'm going to make sure that I'm level right here, and you can see I already put my pocket holes in. That's because I already came in and installed this and didn't think about this until after. So, and then I looked at my post and it wasn't vertical. So that's about level right there. I'll go ahead and mark a line. So I'm going to disconnect this and shave this piece off. That way when I attach my post, it will be vertical. And then I'll go ahead and close up this bed and we'll be done with this side. We'll just need to do the other bed. All right, we're going in with the last piece. This is not yet attached, this board here. I don't have a clamp big enough to span this whole distance, so one way to do it is just with some ratchet straps. Put it around the post. Get these set up real quick. Alright, so yeah, then you get your alignment right. It's pretty good, and then just tighten it up. This also works pretty well if you don't have a second set of hands to help out. And now you can just put your screws in, which I'll do now. These are Craig screws with a square head, and they're coated. Alright, that side looks pretty good. I'm now building the gate for the garden. I've got a basic sketch here. It's going to be 24 and 5/8 plus at the top, so it's 11/16. 24 and 11/16 at the top, the distance between the two posts, and then 24 and 9/16 at the bottom. So it's 1/8 of an inch difference. Not really enough to where you're going to notice it. So I went ahead and cut these to 24 and 1/8 plus, so 24 and 3/16. That's going to allow for about a 1/2 inch gap, so about 1/4 inch on each side, which I think is going to be perfect. So the way I'm building this gate is to make it with lap joints. I'll show you real quick how to make a lap joint, what a lap joint is. A lap joint is where you take half of one of the pieces of material, you cut it away, so you end up with a notch like this, and the other half, so it fits together basically like a puzzle piece. You put glue there. It's a very, very strong joint. That's how I'm making the gate. Just a fun little way to do it. So I'll show you how to make this lap joint. So I'm using a table saw to make the lap joint. I've got a dado blade. A dado blade is just a series of blades stacked together, such that it will, the way I have it now on the saw, it'll take off a little bit over 1/4 of an inch every single pass with the saw. I have enough dado blades to do a full inch, but I actually don't have enough length, don't have enough threads on my shaft to be able to put that many blades on. So this is pretty much the max I can get on this little table saw here. So I'll show you how to do it. I make an initial cut where I want to start, the lap, just so that I can get a precise cut. So I make this cut on my miter saw exactly where I want to start the lap joint, and then I put it down on the saw. You kind of have to line it up. I make the initial cut using the fence here. Kind of line it up exactly where I want it. I'm going to turn the saw on to do this. Alright, here's my design. I'm going to join these slats up with biscuits. I've got all lap joints all down that side, all lap joints down that side, and then I'll have a cross piece that's also lap jointed right there. I've cut a curve using a jigsaw, simple curve. Here's the gate all dry. I have some final cleanup work to do on this. I've got some overhanging pieces, like you see right here and over here. I'm gonna clean that up, and also on the sides too. I'm gonna clean those up by using a flush trim router bit.
And here's the fully assembled garden. I added some lateral braces attached to the side walls with pocket holes to help the garden maintain its shape over time. You'll notice the black coating. I'll talk about that later. Next up is to add some dirt.
Moving right along, we got some dirt in our planter boxes now. About 2.5 cubic yards of dirt. It's a pain to get all this in the backyard, but it's there now, so let's move right along. I've got all these little scraps, these little offcuts. Turns out these are gonna be a pretty good size to be able to make a frame for my chicken wire that's gonna go around the entire perimeter of this thing. So I have all these pieces, and I'm gonna be cutting them down to size and attaching them to the post to make the framing. Alright guys, I've done a lot since the last video. I'll kind of get you up to speed on what I've done, and we could just kind of talk through it. So we finished up the beds. We stained them all. I used a Ready Seal natural stain from Home Depot. It's a natural cedar stain, and it's a stain and sealer in one. I haven't used it before, but it seems like it's working pretty good. The water kind of beads off of it now, and I just applied that with a brush. And also, if you come up close with the camera, we applied what was called a Black Beauty layer of paint. It's almost like a tar on the inside of here, and I applied that to all of the wood on the inside. Usually this product is used at the bottom of fence posts that go in the ground. And it helps to protect the wood from rotting over time. So it actually forms like a almost like a membrane. So now the wood is not really in direct contact with the soil, which is kind of what I wanted. Again, going for longevity here, so I think that'll work pretty well. Then we went ahead and you saw me adding the framing for this wire sort of animal barrier. We get a lot of rabbits and stuff in our backyard, so I went ahead and applied this. We cut this with some wire snips to the right size that we wanted, and then I bought a staple gun from Harbor Freight actually. It was like 20 bucks. It's a brad gun and stapler in one, and attaching this with those staples worked really, really well. So look out for that. It's a 2-in-1 brad gun and stapler from Harbor Freight, super cheap. Other than that, we just put the soil in, and I've got some corn coming up right here that I planted from seed. We might be a little late season to get anything on this, but hey, we figured we'd give it a try. Over here I've got tomatoes, 4 different varieties of tomatoes, and then 4 different varieties of peppers. Up front, I made this gate out of the same cedar. This was just some scrap cedar. We put a nice little star on it as well. This is all just lap jointed like I showed in the other video, and stained just the same way. And then what else can I show you? Down here at the bottom we've got some landscape fabric that we're putting down, and also some crushed granite or some decomposed granite that we're going to put down to make a kind of a walking path, a hardscape as they call it. So we're laying this landscape fabric down to sort of try to keep the weeds back over time, and you'll see how that goes. And with that, the garden is finished. We've got some vegetables. It's been a few weeks since that last video, so the vegetables are kind of growing pretty quickly now. So we put down, I want to say 2 or 3 inches of crushed granite on top of that landscape fabric, and that's worked out really well as a walkway. I'll open the gate right here. Sit. I'll open the gate right here. But yeah, it's a really nice walkway. I like how that came out. And our tomatoes and everything are looking a little sickly, but they are growing some tomatoes, so I need to figure out what's going on with them. But super excited about just seeing these crops come up. You see how big some of this corn is? It's getting pretty tall. It's just really fun. This is exactly what I wanted, and why I've been waiting so long and wanting to do this for so long was making a garden, just because, I don't know, it's something soothing about just coming here at the end of a work day and spending time with the plants and trying to understand what they need. It's just really cool. So if you take on something like this too, I hope you have this feeling at the end of the job as well. I hope you've learned something through the videos. If you have any comments that you'd like to make or any questions that you'd like to ask, I'm usually pretty good about responding, so go ahead and post it. Thanks, and again, if you like the video, subscribe, help me out.